HOA board threatened to fine me $50,000, doesn't know I'm the city's mayor. A notice declaring a $50,000 violation was taped right onto my front door. What the HOA board president didn't know was that I had just signed an executive decision to redraw the entire administrative boundary of the land she was currently standing on. My name is Alex Rexford, 42. I am not just a successful real estate developer. I am the sitting mayor of Northwood, a rapidly expanding exurb. For the past 2 years, I have successfully kept my job title a secret from my neighbors. To them, I am just the rich new guy who lives on the corner lot, frequently travels, and has the baffling hobby of planting a native fruit orchard right in his front yard, a quiet act of rebellion against the sickening uniformity of the Perfecta subdivision. Perfecta is a cookie-cutter community where every house is painted pale beige. Every lawn is cut to an exact $1.50 inches. And every soul lives under the tyrannical gaze of the Perfecta Heights HOA, a small but exceptionally arrogant organization. At the heart of this nightmare is Deborah Vance, 55. Deborah is not just the HOA president. She is the embodiment of micromanagement and hypocrisy. She wears oversized sunglasses, is always in high-end athleisure wear despite never exercising, and navigates the streets in an electric golf cart, patrolling the lanes like a general inspecting a battlefield. Deborah believes this neighborhood is the pure reflection of the perfection she has painstakingly engineered. It all started on a Saturday morning. I was enjoying my coffee, watching the wild plum tree I planted begin to blossom a native species I'm trying to reintroduce to support local insect ecology. Ring, ring! The doorbell rang, followed by a knock so authoritative it sounded like the person outside was trying to dismantle the door. I opened it to find Deborah Vance standing there, her eyes sweeping over my pajama pants with obvious disdain. Next to her was Brett, a young HOA member who always tries to look important by frantically taking notes in a small ledger. Mr. Rexford, Deborah began, her voice as sharp and cold as stainless steel. I am not happy to be here on a Saturday morning, but you have forced my hand. I raised an eyebrow. Good morning, Mrs. Vance. My plum tree is blooming, isn't that lovely? Deborah looked at the tree as if it were a health hazard. Absolutely not. This is completely unacceptable. This notice, pursuant to Section C 4B of the Landscaping Design Rules, strictly prohibits the planting of any species not included in the approved standard planting list. Brett solemnly held out a piece of paper with bold lettering. Notice of severe violation. I received it yesterday. Thank you, Brett, I said, not even reaching for it. I read it. It states my wild plum tree jeopardizes the aesthetic uniformity of the neighborhood. Precisely. And your weed-filled garden, it is frankly an insult to neighbors who maintain their standards. I've attached an estimate for hiring a landscaping crew to replace the entire lawn and remove that savage tree. Deborah pointedly gestured. It's estimated at $1,500. You have 48 hours to begin remedial work, or we will do it and you will be charged. Furthermore, you face a fine of $50 per day. I nodded slowly. I could settle this right now. I could just say, I am the mayor. But the pleasure of watching her smug complacency shatter would not come so soon. I was planning a lesson in true power. I understand, Mrs. Vance, the HOA rules, I said, my tone perfectly placid. But I have one small question. Deborah placed a hand on her hip, exhibiting clear impatience. Make it quick. I have a meeting shortly to discuss banning outdoor clotheslines. It concerns my plum tree, I continued. It is a vital native species. I filed a proposal with the City Council 6 months ago to amend the city's landscaping code to encourage, if not mandate, the use of native species in new development zones like Perfecta. I received approval last week. Deborah scoffed, a grating sound. City Council! This is a private community, Mr. Rexford. Our HOA covenants are signed into your deed. Our rules supersede any municipal regulations. Brett nodded eagerly, trying to keep up. That is an interesting legal perspective, I said, maintaining the smile. Very well, I'll look into it. Thank you for stopping by, Mrs. Vance. Enjoy your Saturday. I gently closed the door. I knew the law. Deborah was technically correct. HOA covenants are considered private contracts. But what she didn't know was that I had noticed the excessive aggression of the Perfecta. Heights HOA was crippling the city's growth, generating an alarming backlog of unresolved complaints about capricious fines and poor transparency. I took out my phone and called Sarah Chun, my chief of staff. "Sarah, good afternoon," I said. "Start the paperwork. I need you to conduct a full, exhaustive Freedom of Information Act investigation into every transaction, every meeting minute, and every fine issued by the Perfecta Heights HOA for the past 5 years. I want everything public. Concurrently, draft a formal letter to Deborah Vance, President, requesting an emergency meeting to discuss native planting regulations and the legal review of urban area organizational structures. Remember, do not mention my title in the initial correspondence. Just the mayor's office." I looked out the window. Deborah and Brett were zooming away on the golf cart, presumably in search of their next victim. $50,000? She was about to find out what a real fine looks like. The early afternoon sun beat down on Northwood, creating shimmering mirages on the meticulously manicured streets of Perfecta Heights. Alex Rexford had spent the better part of the morning in his home office, which he often jokingly referred to as his satellite city hall. He wasn't dealing with municipal budgets or infrastructure bills today. He was dealing with the most petty of local politics. The HO Alex had received the expected response to the formal letter sent by his chief of staff, Sarah Chun. It was a dismissive, 2-sentence email from Deborah Vance's personal account, forwarded by the HOA's overworked and clearly underpaid administrative assistant. The HOA letterhead had been replaced by a childish, all-caps message block, the email, riddled with grammatical errors and an air of supreme condescension. Simply stated, "Mr. Rexford's landscaping is a private matter. We do not meet with city offices regarding bylaw enforcement. His violation will be addressed Monday." The sheer arrogance was almost admirable. Deborah Vance genuinely believed her tiny kingdom's charter superseded the authority of the entire municipal government. Alex leaned back in his leather chair, a slow smile spreading across his face. He pulled up the live feed from a small, discreet security camera he had mounted near his garage. The footage showed a white, late-model pickup truck, clearly labeled with the logo of a local landscaping company, parked just down the street. It was a premature scouting mission. Deborah was already gearing up for Monday's promised tree removal. This was a direct signal that she considered the city's request an empty threat. The tension in the neighborhood escalated dramatically that evening. Alex was taking his weekly Sunday break, a tradition of tinkering with a vintage sailboat he kept stored in his fully enclosed, opaque fenced backyard. The boat, a sleek, beautifully restored $20,000 catamaran named the Rogue, was entirely hidden from public view. Or so he thought. He was applying a final coat of varnish when he heard the unmistakable, whiny buzz of Deborah Vance's electric golf cart. It sounded like an angry hornet as it slowly circled the back perimeter of his property. Then, a distinct click-click-click. Alex knew that sound. It was the shutter of a telephoto lens. Deborah, in her quest for HOA violations, had clearly scaled the small, decorative stone wall of the neighboring property, a sweet, elderly couple she frequently harassed, and was now aiming her camera over his 6-foot privacy fence, committing a clear act of invasion of privacy to capture a perceived offense. Her need for control was overriding her already fragile judgment. A few hours later, a second violation notice was slipped under his door. This one was far more aggressive than the first, and the speed of delivery indicated Deborah was operating on pure, self-righteous adrenaline. Notice of major violation, recreational vehicle storage. $500 fine immediately. Reason: the storage of a non-street legal watercraft within the community, even on private property, constitutes an eyesore and safety hazard as per Section D-12 of the Covenants. This vehicle was photographed and documented by the board president on Sunday, 4:15 p.m. Failure to remit payment and remove the hazard will result in further escalation, including legal fees and property lien consideration. Alex held the paper, shaking his head not in anger, but in sheer amusement at her escalating audacity. She had trespassed or at least coerced her way onto his neighbor's property to spy. on his completely private backyard and fine him for a boat that was completely invisible from the street. This wasn't about rules. It was a clear pattern of abuse of power and targeted harassment. He walked over to his laptop, opened a new document, and began drafting a cease and desist letter on his personal legal letterhead, demanding the immediate destruction of all photos taken of his private property and threatening a civil suit for invasion of privacy. He knew the HOA's legal standing was tissue paper thin on this one, but he needed to document the abuse of power for the larger, more powerful action to come. Meanwhile, Deborah Vance was holding a completely unofficial and highly self-important emergency HOA meeting in her lavish, beige living room. Her two most loyal board members, the easily led Brett and the perpetually nervous Marcia, sat awkwardly on her pristine white sofa. And then he has the gall to send a letter from the city office. Deborah sneered, taking a dramatic, noisy sip of sparkling water. She wore a smug look of absolute victory, as if any little city functionary could tell me how to run my community. I don't know who this Alex Rexford is, but he clearly thinks he's above the rules. The boat is a perfect example. $500 fine, effective immediately. And the tree, the wretched, ugly. The tree will be gone Monday at 9 a.m. I've already authorized the removal. Brett scribbled furiously in his notebook. Tree removal, 9 a.m., confiscate boat photos. Done. But Deborah, Marcia stammered, twisting her pearl necklace, clearly uncomfortable with the illegal surveillance. What if he complains to the city? About the trespassing? And the $50,000 fine we issued to the Peterson family last month? They're threatening to get a real lawyer. Deborah dismissed the concern with a flick of her hand. The Petersons are irrelevant. They let their roof tiles fade and their fence posts lean. We have them on contract. And this Rexford? Let him call the city. I am the city in this neighborhood. My rules are the contracts they signed. The only layer that matters is the one the HOA pays, and they are excellent at delaying and intimidating. We will deal with Mr. Rexford's $50 a day fine, and then we will deal with his $50,000 violation when he tries to sell that ugly house of his. She leaned forward, her voice dropping conspiratorially. I have a feeling, Brett, that this Rexford is just renting or maybe laundering money. No real professional would live here and cause this much trouble. We need to show him who is truly in charge of Perfecta. As Deborah plotted her Monday morning victory, Alex Rexford was not idling. He was on a conference call with Sarah Chun and the city attorney. City attorney, Alex's voice was calm and measured. I want you to draft a formal legal opinion on the use of telephoto lenses and unauthorized photography by a private entity onto private property within city limits, specifically focusing on harassment and stalking charges. Concurrently, Sarah, pull every single meeting minute, financial record, and fine notice related to the Peterson family's $50,000 violation. I want to know exactly what $50,000 violation looks like on paper, and I want an immediate administrative freeze placed on their debt. He paused, a dark, strategic glint in his eye, and finally, send a formal notification, delivered via city courier and certified mail, to the landscaping company Deborah hired. It is a notification regarding City Ordinance 4A, which mandates a permit for the removal of any tree over 6 feet tall on private residential property, with special protections for native species. They won't get a permit for a protected native species. Make sure they receive it before 8 a.m. Monday. Let's see how Deborah deals with a fully legal, bureaucratic roadblock enforced by an entity she claims is beneath her. And make sure the landscaping company knows that violating this ordinance results in a $10,000 fine levied against them personally. The stage was set for Monday morning. Deborah Vance, armed with her camera and her small-minded rules, was about to run headfirst into the cold, calculated efficiency of the city hall she believed she could ignore. Deborah Vance had escalated the personal vendetta by illegally photographing my backyard and fining me $500 for my boat. What she didn't know was that City Hall had just launched a full-scale, legally mandated investigation into every single financial and administrative decision her HOA had made over the last 5 years. Monday morning dawned bright and filled with anticipation. While Deborah Vance was likely still in her kitchen, polishing her golf cart and rehearsing her authoritarian speech for the impending confrontation with my landscaping. Alex Rexford was already in his official domain, the pristine, mahogany-paneled corner office at City Hall. Sarah Chen, his chief of staff, entered the office, her arms laden with binders labeled with the distinctive, amateurish logo of the Perfecta Heights HOA. The documents, obtained through the Freedom of Information Act (FOIA) request executed swiftly over the weekend, were a testament to the chaotic and self-serving nature of Deborah Vance's reign. "Mr. Mayor," Sarah began, her face tight with a mixture of professional seriousness and private outrage, "the initial audit is complete. What we found goes far beyond petty landscaping disputes. This isn't just about an ugly tree. It's about systemic financial mismanagement and a clear pattern of targeted harassment." Alex leaned forward, setting aside the city budget report he'd been reviewing. "Give me the highlights. Sarah, start with the most egregious violations, the ones that are impossible for their private counsel to spin." Sarah opened the first binder, labeled Financials. Their treasurer, who appears to be Deborah's sister-in-law, has been consistently misrepresenting the reserve fund. They are required to hold $200,000 in reserves for major repairs, but our preliminary figures show they've spent nearly $150,000 on board enrichment activities, which mostly translates to expensive golf outings and designer furniture for Deborah's private office in the community clubhouse. Alex nodded slowly. Financial misconduct and lack of transparency? Textbook misuse of power. That's a strong civil case for any resident, and potentially a criminal referral. Sarah moved to the next binder, meeting minutes and board actions. This is where it gets personal and, frankly, disturbing. They have been applying rules selectively. The minutes show that Mr. Jenkins, the developer who built Deborah's oversized sunroom, received an unanimous waiver on his building fees. Yet they denied Mrs. Thompson, the single mother 2 streets over, permission to build a small wheelchair ramp for her disabled son, citing aesthetic non-uniformity. "The hypocrisy," Alex murmured, the calm control in his voice tightening. "They weaponize the rules against the weak while granting favors to their cronies." "What about the Peterson family? The couple Marcia mentioned, the $50,000 fine?" Sarah opened the final slim binder, containing only 3 documents. "Here it is, Mr. and Mrs. Peterson. They are both in their late 70s, fixed income. The violation is for faded roof tiles and neglect of exterior paint, cited under Section A9, the HOA, and an outside contractor, a company owned by Deborah's husband, provide an estimate for the repairs. $5,000 for the roof cleaning and painting. When the Petersons couldn't afford it, the AOA issued a $50,000 lien against their property, demanding the money be paid immediately or they would foreclose." The air in the office grew suddenly colder. Alex rose and walked to the panoramic window, overlooking the entire city, including the small, perfectly beige section that housed Perfecta Heights. He felt a deep, chilling surge of moral responsibility. $50,000 against a couple of senior citizens for faded paint, Alex said, his voice quiet but deadly serious. "That's not enforcement, Sarah. That's extortion. They are using the threat of ruin to maintain their illusion of control. And they are doing it with money I, as mayor, oversee in terms of public interest." He turned back, his expression now completely focused. "This changes everything. My little plum tree is irrelevant now. This is a public service crisis disguised as an HOA dispute. We need to save the Petersons, and we need to dismantle this entire operation legally and comprehensively. We've already placed the administrative freeze on the Petersons' debt." "Per your instruction," Sarah confirmed. "And the city attorney has drafted the opinion on the surveillance. It's a clear case of violation of privacy, and could lead to harassment charges if you choose to press them." "Good. Now, let's address the $9 a.m. appointment Deborah planned for my plum tree," Alex said, a slight, knowing smirk returning. "Did the landscaping company receive our notification regarding City Ordinance 4A? "They did," Sarah confirmed, checking her notes. "The owner called the city attorney's office in a panic. Exactly at 8:05 a.m., they were informed that removing a protected native species without a permit carries a $10,000 fine per offense levied against the landscaping company, not the homeowner. They immediately canceled the job with the HOA. They also asked if the city was doing a general review of Perfecta's compliance. Alex leaned on his desk. Tell the city attorney to confirm that, yes, the city is taking an increased interest in the legal compliance of all community associations operating within Northwood. We are laying the groundwork. She is about to find out that the red tape she used to choke her neighbors is now being wrapped tightly around her own neck. His phone buzzed. It was a text message, not from Deborah, but from the Petersons' grandson, who lived nearby. Just saw Deborah Vance drive by Alex Rexford's house on her cart, staring at his tree. She looks like she's about to explode. The tree is still there. Thanks, whoever you are. Alex smiled. The first battle was won without firing a shot, just the precise, efficient application of municipal law. The legal documentation he had just reviewed, however, meant the war was about to become very public and very devastating for Deborah Vance. Set up the meeting with the city council for Thursday, Alex instructed Sarah. The agenda will be titled, Review of Municipal Authority over Private Community, Covenants and the Protection of Senior Citizens from Predatory Practices. It's time to bring the full weight of City Hall down on Perfecta Heights. Deborah Vance's landscaping crew failed to show up to cut down my native tree, stopped by a city ordinance she knew nothing about. What she still didn't realize was that I was convening an emergency session of the city council to legally invalidate the very section of the HOA covenant she uses to assert her authority. The city council meeting was intentionally scheduled for an unusual time and titled with vague bureaucratic language, Review and Adoption of Northwood Landscaping Sustainability Amendments. The agenda, designed by Alex Rexford and Sarah Chun, minimized public notice to avoid alerting the hyper-vigilant HOA members. Alex, impeccably dressed in his mayoral suit, stood at the podium. He wasn't arguing a personal case. He was presenting policy that would fundamentally change the legal landscape for all community associations in Northwood. Members of the council, citizens, Alex began, his voice carrying the authority he reserved for his official role. For years, Northwood has prided itself on forward-thinking environmental policy. Yet, we have a silent crisis. Our municipal code implicitly allows for the penalization of ecologically sound practices. Specifically, I am referring to the aggressive removal of native, drought-resistant flora in favor of water-intensive, non-native turfgrass and purely ornamental, unsustainable planting lists. He paused, gesturing to a screen displaying images of healthy, vibrant native plants, including a zoomed-in, beautiful photo of his own wild plum tree in full bloom. This evening, I propose the immediate adoption of Ordinance 38B, the Urban Biodiversity and Landscape Mandate. He walked the council through the points, speaking about water conservation and insect ecology, all dry, technical points that masked his true strategic intent. The core of Ordinance 38B is simple. It establishes a mandatory protection status for all indigenous Northwood flora, and it grants homeowners the explicit, protected right to plant native species on their property, regardless of local or communal restrictions. Furthermore, and this is the crucial legal component, Section 4 reads, any private covenant, bylaw, or agreement that seeks to impede, restrict, or penalize the adoption, cultivation, or maintenance of a city-protected native species shall be deemed null and void to the extent of that conflict, due to the overriding municipal interest in environmental sustainability and water resource protection. The city attorney, standing nearby, nodded subtly. This was the legal twist, the ultimate trump card. By framing the right to plant the tree as an overriding municipal mandate, saving the environment, water, Alex ensured that the HOA's private contract instantly crumbled under the weight of superior public policy. It wasn't about his tree anymore. It was about the city's mandate. A few council members asked routine questions about budget impact, which Alex quickly fielded, showing how the ordinance would actually save the city money in water costs. The discussion lasted less than 30 minutes. All those in favor of adopting Ordinance 38B, the Urban Biodiversity and Landscape Mandate? The council president asked. A chorus of ayes rang out. The vote was unanimous. Alex had just eliminated the legal foundation of Deborah Vance's entire crusade with a single, bureaucratic motion. He walked out of the chambers, the freshly signed ordinance in his hand. A victory secured that Deborah Vance was completely unaware of. She was still operating under the assumption that the HOA rules were paramount. Meanwhile, Deborah Vance was simmering in her beige living room. Her Monday morning victory lap had been a humiliating failure. The landscaping company called her at 9:15 a.m., apologizing profusely, citing a new, complex city ordinance about tree permits, and refusing to step foot on Alex Rexford's property for fear of the massive fines. Idiots! Cowards! Deborah had screamed into the phone. She slammed the receiver down and was now recounting the story to Brett, who looked terrified. "It's a delaying tactic, Brett," Deborah insisted, pacing. "This Alex Rexford character is trying to use bureaucracy to stall us. He thinks he's so clever with his little city contact. Well, two can play that game. I have decided on a new course of action." She dramatically pulled out the $50,000 fine notice for the Peterson family. "We are going to make an example of someone, and it won't be Rexford's ugly tree yet. We will issue the final foreclosure notice to the Petersons tomorrow. It will send a clear message to Rexford and any other rebels. The HOA is serious, and our covenants are backed by the power to take your home. We need to restore order." Brett swallowed hard. "But the Petersons have a lawyer now. And Marcia said the city attorney is asking questions about the fine." Deborah scoffed. "The city attorney is a low-level flunky? They won't challenge a $50,000 lien that's already been filed. It's a private matter. Tomorrow, Brett, you deliver this notice. Make it clear and painful. We need fear to run Perfecta." As Deborah confidently plotted a catastrophic legal error, Alex Rexford was already home, changing out of his suit. He looked at the Ordinance 38B paperwork, then out at his thriving wild plum tree, untouched and now legally untouchable. He picked up his phone and called Sarah Chun. "Sarah, Ordinance 38B is passed and filed," Alex said. "Now, before Deborah can move on the Petersons' lien, I need you to issue one more formal letter, this one from the city's Zoning and Environmental Compliance Office. Send it to the Perfecta Heights HOA. The subject line should read, 'Immediate notification of covenant nullification pursuant to Ordinance 38B and mandated review of fine A. Single quote, got it?" "Mr. Mayor," Sarah replied, already typing, "and Sarah," Alex added, a slight edge of anticipation in his voice. "Make sure the letter is delivered in person by a uniformed city marshal first thing in the morning." The legal ground beneath Deborah Vance's feet was crumbling, and she was digging deeper, completely unaware that the man she was trying to fine $50,000 was the only one with the power to sign away her authority. "The city council had just passed my secret ordinance, legally nullifying the HOAS rule against my tree. But Deborah Vance, blind with rage and unaware of her lost authority, decided that if the law wouldn't help her, she would take matters into her own. Illegally outstretched hands, the uniformed city marshal had delivered the immediate notification of covenant nullification to Deborah Vance at 8 a.m. sharp. The legal language was complex, citing Ordinance 38B, municipal precedents and environmental mandates. Deborah, however, didn't see a legal document. She saw a personal insult. To her, this complex, multi-page document from the city zoning office was just more bureaucratic stalling from Alex Rexford's mysterious contacts. She crumpled the notification into a ball, threw it at Brett, and shrieked, "This is garbage! He's trying to bury us in fake paperwork. He thinks he can hide behind his city friends? We are the authority here. This ends now." Driven by a white-hot fury, Deborah enacted a desperate plan. She knew the professional landscaping company wouldn't touch the tree. So, she drove her golf cart to a nearby construction site and hired 2-day laborers off the books, promising them $200 cash each. They were not bonded, not insured, and had no idea what they were walking into. At 10 a.m. Alex Rexford's security camera app pinged his phone. He looked at the feed and a slow, disbelieving smile crossed his face. Deborah Vance was marching onto his lawn, followed by Brett, who looked physically ill, and 2 confused-looking men carrying a rusty chainsaw and shovels. Alex walked outside, his phone held up, clearly recording. "Good morning, Mrs. Vance," he said, his voice dangerously calm. This is quite a gathering. Are you aware that you are currently trespassing? Trespassing? Deborah spat, her face blotchy with rage. She wore a pristine, cream-colored silk blouse, wildly inappropriate for a manual labor dispute. I am the president of this HOA, and I am enforcing the covenants you agreed to. This weed, she pointed at the plum tree, is coming down today. She motioned to the two laborers. Cut it down now. The man with the chainsaw nervously pulled the starter cord, but Alex held up his hand. Gentlemen, Alex said, addressing the two laborers directly, his voice firm but reasonable. Before you start that engine, you should know that this woman is asking you to commit a crime. The men paused. Looking from Alex to Deborah, this tree is a protected native species under Northwood City Ordinance 38B, Alex continued, pulling the folded official document from his pocket. The city marshal delivered this to Mrs. Vance this morning. If you proceed, you are not just violating an HOA rule, you are violating municipal law. The fine for this violation is $10,000, levied personally against the individual holding the chainsaw, not the HOA. Do you have $10,000? The chainsaw sputtered and died. The man holding it looked at Alex, then at Deborah, with dawning comprehension and terror. He's lying, Deborah shrieked. He's nobody. He's just a renter. I am the one who pays you. I am the homeowner, and I am holding the city ordinance, Alex said, his voice cutting through her hysterics. Furthermore, I am filming this entire interaction. You are trespassing, and you are attempting to destroy private property. I will press charges. The two laborers dropped their tools simultaneously. No money is worth this, lady, one said, backing away quickly. We're out. This is crazy. They picked up their tools and walked off the property, ignoring Deborah's furious screams. Get back here. You're fired. She was left standing on the lawn, humiliated, flanked only by the quivering Brett. Her siege had failed in less than 3 minutes. She turned to Alex, her eyes promising murder. You think you've won, Mr. Rexford? You think you're clever? This isn't over. I will ruin you. I will personally see to it that you are fined into bankruptcy. That boat, your fence, your house? I will find everything. She spun around, her silk blouse flapping, and stomped back to her golf cart. Brett, scurrying behind her. Alex, still recording, watched her go. It's already over, Deborah, he murmured to himself. As she angrily jammed the golf cart into reverse, Alex kept filming. His camera panned, following her retreat. And as the cart sped past the boundary of her own property line, Alex's camera captured what her rage had made her forget. He zoomed in. There, visible over her perfectly compliant fence, was a massive, brand-new, unpainted wooden structure. It was an enormous, two-tiered sun terrace, complete with elaborate latticework and pre-wiring for lights. It was a monstrosity. And Alex knew, from having memorized the HOA's own covenants, that it was grossly in violation. It was easily over $200 square feet, exceeded the height limitations, and was built with unapproved materials. Alex stopped recording. A slow, predatory smile, a smile of pure, karmic satisfaction spread across his face. Deborah Vance, in her obsessive quest to punish him for a native tree, had just handed him the very weapon he needed to destroy her. He dialed his phone. Sarah, he said, his voice purring with victory. I need you to pull the building permits for Deborah Vance's address at 124 Perfecta Drive, all of them. And while you're at it, send a municipal building inspector over there immediately. I think we just found a major unpermitted construction of our own. Deborah Vance's attempt to illegally cut down my tree had failed spectacularly. In her retreat, she exposed her own massive, unpermitted, and illegal sun terrace. I had just dispatched a city inspector, but now it was time to end the game completely. The time for hiding was over. The letter that arrived at Deborah Vance's house at 3 p.m. on Friday was not a flimsy violation notice. It was delivered by a uniformed city courier. It was printed on heavy, watermarked, cream-colored cardstock, bearing the official gold-embossed seal of the City of Northwood. The language was not a request. It was a summons. You are hereby summoned to an emergency meeting with the Mayor of Northwood on Monday, November 17th at 10 a.m. sharp. Subject: official grievance. Review of HOA financial malfeasance and gross violations of municipal code. Attendance is mandatory. Failure to appear may result in immediate legal action and the preliminary injunction of your association's financial assets. Deborah was, for the first time, genuinely shaken. Financial malfeasance? She whispered to Brett, who had come running over. They can't. This is a private community. What are we going to do, Deborah? Brett was visibly hyperventilating. The mayor. They're getting the mayor involved. Deborah, ever the narcissist, quickly rebuilt her crumbling facade. This is just a scare tactic, Brett. This Rexford character has clearly gone crying to some weak-willed politician. He's trying to use his contacts to intimidate me. She smoothed her expensive athleisure top. Fine, I will go. I will go, and I will explain to this mayor exactly what kind of degenerate we are dealing with. I will demand they sanction Rexford for wasting city time. I will not be bullied. Deborah Vance strode into the opulent waiting room of the mayor's office as if she owned it. She was dressed in what she considered her power outfit, a sharp white pantsuit that looked sterile and severe. She scoffed at the historical paintings on the wall. Deborah Vance, here to see the mayor, she announced to the receptionist. The mayor is expecting you. You may go right in, the receptionist said. Gesturing to two massive oak doors, Deborah pushed them open and marched inside. Her heels clicking loudly on the polished hardwood floor, the office was vast. A wall of glass looked out over the entire city. An American flag and a city flag stood in the corners. At a small conference table sat Sarah Shawn, Alex's chief of staff, and the city attorney. Both looking exceptionally grim and holding thick binders, but the main desk, a massive, imposing piece of mahogany, was occupied by a high-backed leather chair. Turned away from the door, facing the window. Mr. Mayor? Deborah said, her voice dripping with false deference. Thank you for seeing me on such short notice. I am being subjected to a severe campaign of harassment by a resident in my community, a man named Alex Rexford. And he is now apparently abusing city resources to... The chair slowly swiveled around, sitting in it. Not in pajamas or work clothes, but in a perfectly tailored navy blue suit. Was Alex Rexford. He didn't smile. His expression was cold, official, and utterly devoid of the mild-mannered neighbor she thought she knew. He was the man from the City Hall portraits, the man from the election billboards. He was the mayor. Deborah Vance froze. The color drained from her face. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. The blood-red lipstick she had so carefully applied now looked garish against her pale skin. You... she stammered, her hands visibly shaking. You're him. Hello, Deborah, Alex said, his voice resonating with the full authority of his office. Please sit. We have a great deal to discuss. Deborah didn't sit. She staggered back a step, gripping her purse. This is a conflict of interest. This is ... illegal. You can't. What I can't do, Alex interrupted, his voice like steel, is allow a private entity within my city to engage in what my city attorney here defines as a pattern of racketeering, financial malfeasance, and targeted elder abuse. Your dispute was never with Alex Rexford. The neighbor, your dispute, Mrs. Vance, has always been with the City of Northwood. You just didn't know it. He stood up, towering over her from behind his desk. Let's review the agenda, shall we? He picked up a document. First, criminal trespass and attempted property damage. My property. Friday, 10 a.m. I have you on high-definition video. Hiring unbonded laborers to destroy private property, which I might add, is now a city-protected species under Ordinance 38B, which I signed into law last Thursday. He tossed the document onto the desk. Deborah flinched. Second, the Peterson family. He slid a thick binder across the desk. It landed with a heavy thud. This $50,000 lien. This is a work of art, Deborah. A masterpiece of predatory lending and extortion. The city attorney has already filed an emergency injunction to have this lien nullified. Furthermore, the district attorney's office is opening an investigation into your HOA for felony elder abuse and extortion. Deborah finally collapsed into the chair, her legs giving out. No. It was just the rules. And finally, Alex said, walking around the desk to stand directly in front of her, let's talk about your rules. He pulled out his phone and tapped the screen. A massive monitor on the wall lit up. It was a live feed from a city drone hovering over Deborah's own house. It showed, in stark detail, the massive, unpainted, and hideous sun terrace she had built. "My building inspector, Mr. Davis, paid you a visit this morning. Did you know, Deborah, that your violates 17 separate municipal building codes? It's not permitted. It's not up to code. It's built over a public utility easement. And according to your own HOA bylaws, it's an unapproved structural addition." He leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. "The city's fine for this level of violation is $1,000 per day. But the HOS fine, as you wrote it, is a one-time charge of $50,000 for gross structural non-compliance." He stood back up. "You are, in short, in violation of city law, state law, and your own covenants. You threatened to fine me $50,000. You illegally levied a $50,000 lien against an elderly couple. And all the while, you yourself were committing a $50,000 violation. The hypocrisy is breathtaking." Alex sat on the edge of his desk, the ultimate picture of calm, righteous power. "You are finished, Deborah. The only question now is how..." The reveal was complete. Deborah Vance, the HOA tyrant, was sitting in my office. Facing me as the mayor, she was exposed as a hypocrite, a bully, and a potential criminal. The power fantasy was over. Now it was time for the justice. Deborah Vance was no longer the imposing HOA president. She was a shrunken, pale figure, staring blankly at the drone footage of her illegal sun terrace. The silence in Alex Rexford's office was heavy, broken only by the quiet hum of the city outside. Brett, who had been summoned by Sarah Chun and was standing near the door, looked like he was about to faint. I can fix it," Deborah finally whispered, her voice cracking. "I can tear it down. I'll pay the fine." "The city fine?" "The $1,000. Alex shook his head slowly, his expression devoid of sympathy. "No, Deborah. It's too late for that. You've operated this HOA as a personal kingdom, and you've used its power to terrorize residents. My $50 a day tree fine? That was just the entry point? The $50,000 lien you placed on the Peterson family, that was the crime. That was the act that brought the full weight of my office down on you." The city attorney spoke for the first time, his voice a dry monotone that carried more threat than any shout. "Mrs. Vance, the investigation into your financials, which Mayor Rexford authorized last week, has uncovered significant evidence of fiduciary duty violations, embezzlement of reserve funds for personal enrichment, and a conspiracy to commit wire fraud related to your contracts. The district attorney is prepared to seek an indictment against you, your husband, and your sister-in-law." The treasurer. Brett let out a small squeak and slid down the wall, sitting on the floor. "A criminal indictment," Alex repeated, letting the words hang in the air. "That means prison time, Deborah. That means all your assets seized, your reputation destroyed, and the end of Perfecta as you know it. That is the path you are currently on." Deborah looked up, her eyes wide with pure, unadulterated panic. "No, please, Alex, Mr. Mayor. What do you want?" I'll resign. I'll resign from the board." "Resignation is not a negotiation point. It's a given," Alex said coldly. "As of 9 a.m. this morning, the city has filed for an emergency injunction to place the Perfecta Heights HOA into temporary receivership, pending the outcome of the DAS investigation. Your board is dissolved. Your bank accounts are frozen." He walked over to his desk and picked up a single, prepared document. "However," Alex said, "the city is, as always, interested in efficient and just resolutions. The DAS primary interest is in making the victims whole, specifically the Peterson family." He slid the document across the conference table. It was a settlement offer. "This is your one and only chance to avoid a criminal trial, Deborah. It's very simple. You have two options." He held up one finger. "Option 1, you refuse this offer. The city attorney and the DA proceed with the full force of the law. We will see you in court, and given the evidence, you will likely be incarcerated within 6 months." He held up a second finger. "Option 2, you sign this agreement. The agreement states the following. First, You will immediately and permanently resign from any and all community boards in Northwood. Second, you will issue a formal, public apology to all residents of Perfecta Heights for your mismanagement. Third, and this is the most important part, Alex leaned forward, his eyes locking onto hers. You will personally pay the $50,000 fine for your own illegal sun terrace. However, that $50,000 will not be paid to the HOA nor to the city. You will write a certified check for the full amount, payable directly to Mr. and Mrs. Peterson, as restitution for the emotional distress and financial terror you inflicted upon them. You will make them whole. You will also pay, out of your own pocket, for the complete demolition of your illegal terrace, to be overseen by a city inspector. Deborah stared at the paper. $50,000? Personally? It's the very number you were so eager to use against others, isn't it? Alex said, it's poetic. You pay the exact sum you tried to extort from a family on a fixed income. You do this, and the district attorney will agree to defer the criminal prosecution pending your good behavior. The civil suits from other residents? Those are your problem. But the criminal charges, they can be avoided. This is blackmail. Deborah hissed, a final, weak spark of her old self. The city attorney laughed. No, Mrs. Vance, this is a settlement offer. Blackmail is what you did to the Petersons. This is a legal, binding solution to a problem you created. And it's the only one you're going to get. Alex stood up, signaling the end of the meeting. You have until 5 p.m. today to sign, Deborah. If my office does not have this document with your signature by 5:01 p.m., the DA files the charges tomorrow morning. He looked at Brett, who was still on the floor. Brett, you are a named accessory in the financial investigation. I suggest you find your own lawyer. Now, get out of my office. Both of you.
I gave Deborah Vance an ultimatum. Pay $50,000 in restitution to the elderly couple she terrorized and resigned, or face criminal prosecution. The 5 p.m. deadline passed in silence. She had refused the settlement. She had chosen war. What she didn't realize was that I had already prepared the battlefield. The chamber wasn't just full, it was overflowing. Alex Rexford had called an emergency public hearing on community association governance, and the news had spread like wildfire through Perfecta Heights. The room was packed with residents, many holding small handwritten signs. And HOA tyranny. We are the Petersons. Leave our trees alone. Deborah Vance sat in the front row, a different woman from the one who had crumbled in Alex's office. She was flanked by a slick, expensive-looking lawyer. Her face was a mask of rigid indignation, her arms crossed. She had clearly convinced herself she was a victim, about to be martyred by a corrupt politician. That Brett and Marcia sat 3 rows behind her, looking small and terrified. Clearly trying to distance themselves, Alex, in his capacity as mayor, sat at the elevated dais, flanked by the city council and the city attorney. He banged the gavel. This emergency hearing is now in session, Alex announced, his voice booming over the speakers. We are here to discuss the findings of an emergency municipal investigation into the operations, finances, and governance of the Perfecta Heights Homeowners Association. Deborah's lawyer immediately stood. Mr. Mayor, on behalf of my client, Mrs. Vance, we protest this entire hearing. It is a gross overreach of municipal power and a clear, vindictive personal attack by a city official against a private citizen. We demand— You will sit down, counselor, the city attorney interjected, his voice sharp. This is an official hearing to present evidence of potential violations of state and municipal law. Your client was offered a private settlement, which she refused. This is the consequence of that refusal. You are here to observe, not to object. The lawyer, stunned by the public rebuke, sat down, fuming. Alex nodded to the city attorney. Please proceed. For the next 30 minutes, the city attorney and Sarah Chun presented a cold, factual, and utterly devastating takedown of Deborah Vance's entire regime. They displayed on massive screens the forged meeting minutes. They showed the bank statements with tens of thousands of dollars from HOA dues funneled to board enrichment, golf trips, and consulting fees paid to her husband's company. Then they put up the $50,000 lien against the Peterson family, alongside a photo of their home, a modest, well-kept house with a few faded roof tiles. The room erupted in gasps and angry murmurs. Finally, the presentation culminated in 2 images side by side. Alex's wild plum tree, with a $50 per day fine notice next to it that Deborah's massive illegal, unpermitted sun terrace, with a $50,000 HOA covenant violation, which she wrote, highlighted next to it. The hypocrisy was so blatant, so stark, that the room fell into a dead, shocked silence. Deborah was visibly shaking, her lawyer whispering frantically in her ear. Alex let the silence hang for a moment before he stood, but he didn't speak from the mayor's podium. He unclipped his microphone and walked down the steps, standing on the same level as the citizens. "My name is Alex Rexford," he said, his voice now personal, conversational, "and I am a homeowner in Perfecta Heights. Before I was your mayor, I was your neighbor." He looked directly at Deborah. "For the last several weeks, I, like many of you, have been the target of a campaign of harassment, intimidation, and abuse by this board. I was fined for planting a tree that supports our local ecosystem. While I was being fined, my property was being illegally surveilled." He held up a printout of the telephoto shot of his boat. "And my family's privacy was violated. I was trespassed upon," he continued, "by unbonded laborers sent by Mrs. Vance to illegally destroy my property. And when I used the legal channels of the city to defend myself, she escalated. She tried to ruin an elderly couple with a $50,000 fine, not to enforce a rule, but to send a message, to show her power." He turned to the crowd. "This isn't governance. This is a protection racket. This isn't a community. It's a dictatorship, and it ends tonight." He turned back, put his microphone on, and walked back to the mayor's dais. He was no longer Alex, the neighbor. He was a mayor. "Therefore," Alex announced, his voice resonating with full executive authority, "based on the overwhelming evidence of financial malfeasance, systemic abuse of power, and a fundamental failure to operate in good faith, I am exercising my authority under Northwood City Charter, Section 8A. As of this moment, 8:47 p.m., I am declaring Perfecta Heights Homeowners Association to be an abusive and delinquent entity." He banged the gavel. "The board is hereby dissolved. The city will immediately appoint a third-party, independent receiver to take control of all assets, manage all operations, and oversee a new, fair, and transparent election. Mrs. Vance, your authority is gone." The room was silent for 1 second, then erupted. The residents stood, cheering, applauding, some openly weeping with relief. Deborah Vance sat frozen, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred, as the city attorney handed her lawyer the official order. The public hearing was a bloodbath. I had dissolved the board, and the entire room had turned on Deborah Vance. She had refused my settlement, so she would not get restitution. She would get retribution. Now, the full, impersonal, and unavoidable weight of the law, the machine she had ignored, was about to grind her into dust. The chamber was still buzzing with the energy of a liberated populace. Residents were hugging, crying, and shaking hands. As Alex Rexford stood, accepting the thanks of the overjoyed Peterson family, Deborah Vance and her lawyer tried to slip out the side door. They didn't make it. The crowd didn't shout. They didn't throw anything. They just parted like the Red Sea. They created a silent, unmoving corridor of human beings, all of whom stared at Deborah with a mixture of cold pity and righteous contempt. Her subjects were now her jury, and they had found her guilty. "Don't say a word," her lawyer hissed, pulling her by the elbow. Deborah, her face white as chalk, her power suit looking like a Halloween costume, was forced to walk the 100-foot gauntlet of shame, the silence broken only by the click-click-click of her own expensive heels on the marble floor. It was a more profound defeat than any prison sentence. She was no longer feared. She was quite simply irrelevant. Seen the Perfecta Heights clubhouse the next morning. A sleek, black sedan pulled up to the community clubhouse. A woman in a sharp, practical business suit stepped out. This was M.S. Henderson, the court-appointed receiver. She was an impartial, humorless, and ruthlessly efficient forensic accountant. She was met at the door by a locksmith and 2 city marshals. Brett and Marcia were already there, looking like children called to the principal's office. We brought the keys," Brett whimpered, holding out a jangling ring. Ms. Henderson didn't take them. "Unnecessary," she said, her voice crisp. "Mr. Torres," she nodded to the locksmith, "please begin the rekeying process. All locks, all file cabinets, and all padlocks on the community pool." She turned to Brett and Marcia. My office has already issued a freeze on all HOA accounts and credit cards. A full, top-to-bottom audit begins in 1 hour. You are both instructed to surrender all HOA-related documents, personal laptops, and communication records. You are also not to set foot on this property until the audit is complete. Is that understood? But my laptop has my personal photos. Marcia began. Then you should have thought of that before you used it to help Mrs. Vance embezzle from your neighbors, Ms. Henderson replied, not even looking at her. Marshals, please escort them off the property. The old regime was over. The locks were being changed. Scene, Deborah's house. 2 days later. If the public hearing was the social execution, this was a financial one. At 8 a.m., a City of Northwood municipal demolition crew, not day laborers, but a union-backed heavy equipment team, arrived at Deborah's house. She ran out onto her, perfectly manicured, lawn, for the first time in a bathrobe, her hair in disarray. What is this? You can't be here. The city inspector, the same one who had approved Alex's native plum trees, stepped forward and handed her a bright orange notice. Final order of abatement and demolition. Mrs. Vance. The inspector said, your unpermitted structure failed to pass inspection. You refuse a settlement offer that would have allowed for private demolition, as the structure has been deemed an immediate public nuisance and safety hazard under City Ordinance 112. D. The city is exercising its right to abate the nuisance. You will be billed for the full cost of this demolition, plus administrative fees. Billed? This is my property, she shrieked. No, ma'am, the inspector said, pointing. That part, he gestured to the illegal Sun Terrace, is a municipal hazard. A massive yellow bulldozer rumbled to life. Deborah let out an inhuman wail of frustrated rage as the machine's metal claw bit into first unpainted support beam. The monument to her own hypocrisy was torn down in less than an hour, a pile of splintered wood on her perfect lawn. Scene, the mayor's office that afternoon. Alex was signing paperwork when the city attorney walked in. It's done, the attorney said. The DA has officially filed the criminal charges. Embezzlement, felony elder abuse, and 2 counts of wire fraud. Her lawyer called, trying to reopen the settlement offer. I told him that ship had sailed, burned, and sunk. Good, Alex said, not looking up from his work. She made her choice. There's more, the city attorney said. The receiver's preliminary audit is stunning. She found the $150,000 in embezzled funds, but she also found a private slush fund where Deborah was diverting fines, like the $500 she tried to fine you for the boat. Ms. Henderson, backed by my office, has filed a civil suit on behalf of the receivership against Deborah and her husband personally to reclaim every stolen dollar. That suit includes a $50,000 punitive damage claim, specifically earmarked for the Peterson family. Alex finally looked up, a slow, satisfied smile on his face. So, the Petersons get their $50,000 after all. Oh yes, the city attorney said. When we win the judgment, and we will win, the court will place a lien on her house to pay the debt she tried to put on theirs. The karmic justice was perfect, legal, and complete. The old regime was gone. Deborah Vance was facing criminal charges. Her finances were in ruins, and her illegal Sun Terrace was a pile of rubble. Her reign, built on the illusion of power, had been dismantled by the real, legal authority she never saw coming. IT was a Saturday morning, just like the one where it all began. The air in Perfecta Heights felt different. It was lighter, the oppressive. Uniform beige seemed less dull, and for the first time, there was the sound of children playing the street past the 4 p.m. quiet hour Deborah had once enforced. Alex Rexford stood on his front porch, a ceramic mug of coffee in his hand. He was just Alex, the neighbor, today dressed in a simple polo shirt and jeans. His front yard was no longer a patch of noncompliance. It was a model. The wild plum tree, the source of the entire conflict, was thriving. It was covered in lush green leaves and small, ripening fruit. It was no longer a renegade. It was a symbol, a small, tasteful bronze plaque installed by the new resident-elected HOA board, stood near the sidewalk. Perfecta Heights Native Flora Sanctuary, in partnership with the City of Northwood's Urban Biodiversity Program, Ordinance 38B. This plum tree is the first of many, approved by the Perfecta Heights Landscaping Committee. Mr. and Mrs. Peterson walked by, holding hands. They looked 10 years younger. The stress lines on their faces were gone. "Morning, Alex." Mr. Peterson called out, waving. "Your tree is looking beautiful." "Morning, George. Yours too." Alex replied, gesturing to the new, drought-resistant native saplings that now lined the Petersons' walkway, planted by community volunteers. "And thank you again," Mrs. Peterson added, her voice full of genuine warmth. "The $50,000 from the civil suit, it paid off our mortgage. We're free and clear." "You don't have to thank me, Mary," Alex smiled. "You just have to thank a rigorous municipal auditing process. And maybe Mrs. Vance for being so thorough with her paperwork." They shared a laugh, and the couple continued their walk. Alex's phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah Chun. It was a single blurry photo of Deborah Vance, not in a power suit, but in a drab, court-mandated community service vest, picking up trash along the Northwood Highway. She had taken a plea deal, avoiding prison time but accepting a felony conviction, massive financial restitution, and 2,000 hours of community service. She had lost her house, her reputation, and her power. Alex deleted the photo. He didn't need it. The new HOA, led by a sensible engineer and a single mother, who now had her city-approved wheelchair ramp, had used the recovered funds to completely rework the community. They had canceled the aesthetic uniformity clause and replaced it with a community standards 1. People were painting their doors. Small, tasteful gardens were blooming. The neighborhood, once a sterile prison, was finally a community. Alex took a sip of his coffee. He looked at the plum tree, a small, stubborn act of rebellion that had toppled a tyrant. He had never needed to reveal his power to win. He just needed to use it correctly. The satisfaction wasn't just in the victory. It was in the justice, in the restoration, in the quiet, peaceful morning. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was the city manager. "Mr. Mayor," the text read, "the Regional Planning Commission is here to discuss the new water reclamation project. They're waiting at City Hall." Alex sighed, finishing his coffee. He looked one last time at the plum tree, then at his quiet street. The battle for Perfecta Heights was over, but the work of the mayor was just beginning. He walked inside to get his suit.